Childhood of Jesus, chapter 170. Great thoughts other than love are vain. After this meal, during which Jonathan wept many tears of joy and also of remorse, Jonathan asked Joseph, "Joseph, my old childhood friend, oh, tell me truly how incomparably happy you must really be when you consider the greatness of your calling. What do you feel when you look at the little child and the living faith of your heart tells you, 'See, the little child is God Jehovah Zebaoth, who talked with Adam, with Enoch, with Noah, with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who delivered our fathers from his land's hard bondage through Moses, and himself gave the law in the desert, and for 40 years fed the many people in the desert where nothing grows than only an occasional bush of thorns or a thistle, who spoke through the mouth of the saints and prophets?' Oh, Joseph, say, oh, tell me, what do you feel in the presence of him who laid the foundations of heaven and earth? Yes, who created the angels and made the first pair of human beings and gave them life with his living breath. Tell me, when you think that over, is it possible for you to speak? Does the beholding of the child not bind your tongue to such an extent that you must remain silent in too great reverence for him who always was?" And Joseph answered Jonathan, "You do right that you asked me thus, but just consider for yourself, what shall I do? It is after all like that, and I must bear the Most High just as if he were something low. Otherwise I could not possibly continue. See, God is after all God, and we are his creatures. He is everything, and we are all nothing. This relationship is arithmetically correct. Now, can you even in your loftiest thoughts change anything in this relationship? So you see, your questions are vain. Even if I had a heart as big as the earth, and a head as big as the sky, and then would entertain thoughts and feelings before which all the angels would quake, say, what service would I thereby render him who carries the whole infinity in his right hand, like I carry a grain of sand? Would I thereby be more of a human being, and God the less God? So you see, your question is vain. I can only love the little child with all my strength and render him the necessary service which he requires of me. All other dealing in great thoughts I lay aside, because I well know my greatest and loftiest thought to be an utter, vain nothing compared to God's greatness." This answer gave Jonathan thoughts of quite a different nature, and he afterwards asked Joseph no more such questions. Chapter 171. The Child explains Messiah passages in Isaiah. Towards evening of this day, which, as already stated, was the day before the Sabbath, James took the little child and went up on Joseph's favorite little hill. And Joseph and Jonathan soon followed the example of James and also went up the hill. James, as usual, took some butter and honey along in a small jar, and a piece of wheat bread for the little child, of which he now and then put a small portion into the little child's mouth, for he preferred most of all a piece of bread with butter or honey. Now when James set his jar on a little bench and gaily played about in the grass of the gentle hill with the little child, a few bees and flies quickly visited the jar and feasted in abandon on the sweet contents. When Joseph noticed this, he called to James, "Go and cover that jar with something, or its contents will soon be eaten up by bees and flies." And James went over quickly with the little child and wanted to chase the guests from the jar, but they did not obey him. At this the little child said, "James, give the jar to me, and I will see whether the fly and the bee will also show themselves disobedient to me." Here James gave the jar to the little child, and the child hissed with a threefold tss, tss, tss into the jar, and the flies and the bees instantly departed. Thereupon James gave the little child a small piece of bread with butter and honey, and the child took it and ate it with satisfaction. Jonathan, who had just discussed the wisdom of the Egyptian symbols with Joseph, noticed this action, which seemed to be of very minor importance, and asked Joseph whether any sort of significance containing a higher wisdom could be attached thereto. And Joseph answered, "I would not think so, for not every insignificant action contains hidden wisdom. As often as anyone puts butter and honey out in the open, bees and flies will always appear and eat thereof. One might be able to use this occurrence, like thousands of others, as a parable at a good opportunity, but in itself this action is without meaning." The little child now ran over to Joseph and gaily stated, "My beloved Joseph, this time you are mistaken. What do you read in Isaiah? Is it not written about me as follows? Butter and honey shall he eat, so he will know to reject evil and choose good. But before the boy learns to reject evil and choose good, the land that you see desolate will be forsaken of its two kings, and the Lord will send days upon you, upon your people, and upon your father's house, which have not been since the time that Ephraim was separated from Judah by the king of Assyria. For in that time the Lord will hiss the fly at the end of the waters in Egypt, and the bee in the land of Assur." See, Joseph, what is contained in the words of the prophet is also contained in this act. But the time for the unveiling is still not here, although not far off. Now do you know the son of the prophetess, who was named hasting to booty, speeding to pray? Do you know the son to whom a virgin shall give birth, and shall name him Emanuel? See, all that am I. But you will not grasp that fully until I, as hastening to booty, speeding to pray, and as Emanuel will call father and mother from the height. Here the little child ran back to James again, but Joseph and Jonathan gazed at each other in wide-eyed astonishment at the words of the little child, and at the remarkable actual concurrence of the recent action with the words of the prophet. Chapter 172. He is a sinner who has no love. After Jonathan had somewhat recovered from his astonishment at these words of the little child, he said to Joseph, "Brother, truly, as strongly as I have determined to stay with you today and tomorrow, I just will hardly be able to remain true to this intention. You see, everything here just seems too holy to me. I feel as if I were in a desolate place here, in which everything at which the wanderer looks calls out to him, 'Here is no place for you, but only for spirits.' I also feel like someone on a very high mountain, on whose summit the magic of the far vista at first enchants his senses, but only too soon the very pure and cold air tells him, 'O lazy and impure human beast of burden, go back to your stinking homeland, for here where the purest spirits of the purest ether dwell is no place for an impure soul.' How pure was the great prophet Moses, but when he wished to see the Lord, the same declared to him, 'Me, your God, you cannot see and live at the same time.' Here is the same Lord in the fullness of his holiness. He is here, the one announced by the mouth of all the prophets. How could it be possible for me to any longer bear his visible presence here, since I am after all an old sinner against the whole law of Moses?" And Joseph replied, "Dear friend and brother, you well know what the main law is. Why then would you rather go home than to honor this law by living according to it? Love the Lord with all your might, and do not constantly think of your sins, and you will surely be more pleasing to the Lord than with your constant exclamations. Wait until the little child sends you away. When that happens, then believe that you are unworthy of him. But as long as that does not take place, then remain, for you will eternally never be more at home anywhere than here." Here the little child came over and said, "Joseph, you did right in that you criticized Jonathan a bit. Why is he so stubborn and does not want to stay here when I love him so much? Thereupon the little child turned to Jonathan and inquired, "Jonathan, do you really want to leave here? What ill can possibly be happening to you, since you do not want to stay?" Jonathan answered, "My Lord and my God, see, I am after all a gross sinner against the law." And the little child said, "What are you saying about sins? I do not charge you with any. Do you know who is a sinner? I tell you, he is a sinner who has no love. But you have love, so you are no sinner before me. For I have forgiven you your sins, because I am a Lord from eternity above Moses." Here Jonathan wept, and again decided to stay, and then went over to the little child and caressed him.